All right, hey, welcome in. It's Sunday afternoon, talking Detroit Lions. Breaking news, NFL breaking news. You got it. You got it right here on Rockhound Detroit Lions. How's everybody doing today? Bombshell news. We can quit talking about Myles Garrett. That's right. I'm glad that y'all recognize that we can finally stop talking about these pass rushers. I can hear Bruce right now in my ear from yesterday. Detroit never has any money. Bruce, I'm not mocking you or knocking you, buddy. I'm just saying. Detroit ain't got no money. How come all these other teams can do it? Just because they did it doesn't mean that they can, right? Doesn't mean that they can really afford it. I will guarantee you this. Well, I mean, I probably shouldn't put any guarantees out there, but I will anyway. If the Browns take Abdul Carter in the first round still, I would be surprised. But then again, I probably wouldn't be. That would just be a crazy defensive front. But that would also give the Browns an opportunity to bring somebody in, and then they can get rid of Myles Garrett at some point, whether it's next year or the year after, and walk away from some of that contract. We have no idea what the contract really looks like. There's a lot of guarantee in it, but we really don't know the outs. We don't know how it's written. But I will say this, man. Myles Garrett, you sold out. You sold out for a payday loan. That's all you did. You made all of this fluff, all of this negative energy for nothing. You said you didn't care about the contract. You didn't want an extension. You wanted to get out of Cleveland. And then they come to the table with $40 million a year, and you're like, I can stay in Cleveland another 5 years. It's all good. It's not like I expected you to come to Detroit anyway. We never expected it. So, Detroit Lions bad guy says, hey, you don't want to do guarantees, but I told you, I guarantee you that Myles Garrett wouldn't be a Lion. Hey, I'm right there with you, man. I am right there with you. Matter of fact, I told you that Davenport was going to be back before that ever happened. I'm glad that happened. So look, today it's about Aiden too. Okay, this is craziness. What's going on right now with these contracts? Matter of fact, let me just go ahead and post my article. There we go. Article posted. Myles Garrett, record-breaking extension, implications for Aidan Hutchinson, and it's real. I mean, it is legit. Now things, rubber's hitting the road right now for Aidan Hutchinson and the Detroit Lions. And what do I mean by that? It's this simple. How on earth are you going to pay Aidan Hutchinson $40 million or more next year? If an extension doesn't get done right now and they pick up the fifth, if the Lions really want to, make a player wait, they could make Aiden wait. They could pick up the fifth and say, you're playing out your contract. We'll try to get a deal done in the fifth year before the season starts, which would be next season. So next fall. Or they may just say, we'll try to get a deal done before the 2027 season starts. But you've got a good rookie deal. You're making good money. We want to win a Super Bowl. It is what it is. But I just don't view Brad and Dan as those types of individuals. And the reason why is because they have put so much on their legacy that they are here for the players. And that's what the players will continue to tell you on this team. You see it all the time, that they do right by the players. Remember, Dan's a former football player, right? He's a former Detroit Lion. And he cares about these guys. Not just, what's going on, between the sidelines here and what's going on the field. He cares about these guys outside of football. But more importantly, he wants his players to know that the organization is there for them. So I don't see them trying to wait on Aiden like that or making him wait. They may have a conversation and push it to next year. That I would completely understand, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that's kind of what my article highlighted that I just put out is quite simply, I think that you have to wait on Aiden now. You have to. You can't. There's two rules of thumb, I think, with this. You have to wait because of the simple fact that you don't know what's happening with his injury. You honestly don't know if he's going to be the same player. Anybody that's out there saying that he's going to come back and he's going to be the same player, that's hopium. That's not facts. Facts are crazy, gruesome injury. He needs to play football and see how he responds. Right? That's a fact. Players that come back from an Achilles or an ACL or other broken bones. I mean, some players, hell, Teddy B had a crazy injury that almost ruined his career. And he came back, right? He was never really fully the same person, but he came back. I'm not saying that Aiden can't come back from it. What I'm saying is you don't know what you don't know. And in big time negotiations, that's an X factor. Right? If you go into a conversation or a negotiation with information that you don't have, and how can you negotiate? You can't. So my worry is twofold here. You're either going to give Aiden this huge chunk of money and you don't know what you have yet, or you're going to wait and then it's going to get even richer and he's going to have a crazy 2025 season, which is what we're hoping for. And then that number gets pushed up to 40 million. So before I get into this, before I really get into this, I want to know right now from you guys in the comments, obviously in the chat, but in the comments later, are you extending Aidan Hutchinson right now? If that means you have to pay him 35 plus million to get it done. Cake Man, hey, congratulations on being a member for 6 months, man. Really appreciate you. He says, pay Hutch 50 billion and I'll give him my leg. All right. All right. I don't know how that works, but I hear you. I hear you. Congratulations on 6 months, buddy. Appreciate you. So are you paying Aidan Hutchinson 35 million right now? Is he worth 35 million a year right now? And that's pretty much 35 at 32 million guaranteed. If we're going to talk numbers, based on what these other two gentlemen just got. Max Crosby, 35.5 million. Myles Garrett, 40 million. Max's guarantee, I think, was right around 100 million. And I think Myles is right around 123 million, if I'm not mistaken. Insane numbers. Dude sold out for a payday loan. Straight up. Wow. Yeah, 123 million guaranteed. So that's what? It was a 5-year deal, right? So you do the math. You tell me, how much is it? Unbelievable. Okay, so if you're not going to extend Hutchinson, then I guess in the writing's on the wall. You're going to have to get deep. Now, I will say that I'm speculating here. I don't know this for a fact. Even though I expected Marcus Davenport to be back this year, I think Brad Holmes got inside information yesterday. And well, maybe it's not so much inside when it's between those guys, right? I'm sure all the GMs talk and the owners talk and blah, there's good relationships. Probably said, yeah, we're getting something done with Garrett. And so at that point, you know, not that he planned on going after Garrett. That's not what I'm saying either, Brad. I'm not saying he planned it, but locking up Davenport right away, because as soon as this information comes out and then Monday happens, well, now Davenport's really intriguing option for other teams. So I think it was a smart move. And I'm saying that this could have happened, right? It could be that Brad Holmes knew this was going to happen with Garrett, and he's going to protect, you know, anything that he can to make sure that he's fielding a good, solid team this year, at least before free agency starts. Let's see here. So J-Rod says, Will, I do believe it was around the combine. Aiden's agent hearsay said to hold off on signing. Yeah. So there was a report that came out back then, J-Rod, that, you know, I think it was by, might have been Mike Payton that put it out, that said, you know, that Aiden was told to wait on signing an extension. But if you remember, I said the same thing right around that same time, maybe a week or so before that Aiden would be smart to wait, Because if you force an extension right now, there's no way you're going to get your max deal. However, as a fan, right, if I were the GM, I want to force that extension now if I believe that Aiden's going to be okay. Unfortunately, I wouldn't do that deal. I would wait. I would pick up the 5th and I would wait. And I know it sucks because here's what's going to happen. Hopefully, that Aiden comes out in 25, has his best season yet. Albeit my concerns, I'll push him to the wayside for a moment. Has his best season yet, and then he enters his 5th year, and now he's worth a boatload of money. How are you going to pay him $40 million or more, and the rest of the guys that you have to lock up? And Jared Goff's contract hits $70 million next year. So let me run through this article that I wrote here, and then let's talk about it for a moment. I appreciate you guys reading the Detroit Football Journal. I just launched it, and so far it's been pretty good, man. I've had quite a few reads and quite a few new subscribers. Right now I'm doing everything. I know some of you have paid, as you know, for the subscription. That's my fault. I probably shouldn't have turned on the paid option yet. I wanted to get a bunch of content out before I did that, but I appreciate, you know who you are, and I appreciate you guys. Right now everything's free, just because I want to get the content out and reestablish myself before I charge for anything. But this site will turn into more stuff. You'll see soon here. It'll turn into more. Let me get this. Let's get this article up here. Read my own article. That's kind of fun, right? I used to do it all the time, but quit writing. I write every day, but it's typically just for the morning show and, you know, little I don't think you want to call them skits, but videos that I do. And then I just don't turn it into anything. I quit doing it. Time, man. It's all time. You know, even if it takes 5 minutes to post an article, it's still time. All right, here we go. Let's get it open. All righty. So Myles Garrett's record-breaking extension, implications for Aidan Hutchinson and the future of NFL contracts. That's right, NFL contracts, because this is not just about Aiden. This is not just about Myles. This is about every other non-quarterback in the NFL and how these contracts are now, I mean, wholly inflated. I mean, it's craziness. So Cleveland Browns obviously set the new standard here with Myles Garrett's historic extension. Now, in a groundbreaking move that has reverberated throughout the NFL, the Cleveland Browns have announced a 4-year contract extension for star defensive end Myles Garrett. Just a few days ago, the Las Vegas Raiders secured edge rusher Max Crosby with a 3-year, $106 million extension that made him the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. Now, Crosby was just dethroned in a matter of a few days, right, by Myles Garrett, who signed a new deal averaging $40 million per year, totaling $123.5 million guaranteed. Now, this deal not only cements Garrett's status as one of the league's elite defensive players, but it also establishes a new benchmark. And that's this benchmark that really, in my opinion, is going to significantly alter the financial landscape for non-quarterback contracts across the NFL. Just so happened, it started with 2 edge rushers. Now, if we look at the numbers here, 35.5 to Max, 40 to Garrett. Large guarantees in these deals. At the state of play here, Crosby does remain with the Raiders until 2030, positioning him as a franchise cornerstone. Obviously, the Raiders are trying to build around him. Smart move, right? You got to keep somebody in-house to build around. Garrett's new contract, same thing. They're utilizing him as a cornerstone for the Browns. I mean, they're going to build around him as long as that lasts, right? This solidifies his status as the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. Now, the Browns' substantial investment in Garrett underscores both of his on-field dominance, evidenced by his impressive 28 sacks over the past 2 regular seasons, and the team's commitment to building their defense around him, which is a smart move. I mean, look, the dude's just been a wrecking ball. Garrett he's different, okay? He's just different. He's a one of one. What are the implications for Aiden's future? Now, Garrett's record-setting contract may have far-reaching consequences, particularly for the emerging talents such as Aidan Hutchinson, Now, he was selected second overall in 2022 and quickly became a cornerstone on the Lions defense. His rookie season showcased the potential. He had 9.5 sacks, Pro Bowl selection. Then he followed that up with a remarkable 11.5 sacks in his second season. As Hutchinson entered his fourth year of his rookie deal in 2025, or as he enters his fourth deal in 2025, he is still rehabilitating from a severe broken tibia and fibula that he sustained in week 6 of the 24 season. Now, this injury does raise concerns or questions about his ability to return to form, which in my opinion, it adds some complexity to his impending contract negotiations. Now, while Garrett's new deal, is setting a high bar, I mean, extremely high bar. Like, you don't even have to bend over. What's that game we used to play where you used to bend over to go underneath the bar? I can't remember what the game was called. You don't even have, you can just walk right under it. It's so high. But anyway, Hutchinson's future negotiations will likely be influenced by the precedent. So Garrett, quote, this is a quote by Mike Florio, said Garrett's deal is a game changer for defensive players. That was noted by NFL analyst Mike Florio earlier today. Quote, it highlights the value of elite defensive talent and will undoubtedly affect how teams approach contracts for young stars like Aidan Hutchinson. So, like, it's only going to get worse from here, right? It's only going to get more expensive from here. We know that. Hutchinson's reps, his agents, obviously they're going to argue for a deal that reflects Aidan Hutchinson's on-field impact or performance, especially in light of Garrett's lucrative extension. Now let's look at some of Aidan's on-field performances. I'll talk about that here in just a moment, but the timing, this is what I was talking about earlier. So the timing of the extensions, they do matter. Now, one factor could be this. It could influence Hutchinson's situation, one factor that could influence, I can't even read my own article today. One factor that could influence Hutchinson's situation is the potential for the Lions general manager Brad Holmes to leverage Hutchinson's injury in negotiations. This approach obviously differs from the strategy employed with past players like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jared Goff, whose extensions were done early in the process and then quickly became outdated. So where Brad was foreshadowing, thinking, okay, if I get these guys done early this season, last year, well, we'll have a chance to kind of beat the rush, if you will. Like we need to beat the rush to all of these other extensions, because if we can get it done now, heck, we might save $2, $3, $4, $5, $6 million a season. And you extrapolate that over 3, 4, 5 seasons, that's a boatload of money. That's an extra player or two a year. So I think Brad, being smart here, if he jumps on it now, leverages the injury as a negotiation tactic, well, that could draw that contract down. Is it likely to happen? Probably not. I think these agents are way too savvy and smart, right? Hutch isn't stupid. But then again, Hutch is going to have to roll his own dice on his own future and hope that his own body is going to hold up this year. Only he knows. So anyway, Holmes may find himself in a precarious position this year, as franchises typically hesitate to commit to players that are recovering from such significant injuries. Oftentimes, you expect what I call a throwaway season before they regain their previous form, which generally is not a big deal, right? He may not have, an 11-sack season. Doesn't mean it's a throwaway season, but what if he had 6 sacks this year? And he played in 14 games because, he was nursing himself a little bit in the beginning. To many of us, to you, I'm sure you would consider that a throwaway season for Aiden. But he may need a little bit of time to work himself in. We just don't know. He may hit the ground running in training camp. And he may be totally fine by week 1 and never look back and completely blow the doors off the NFL this year, which I hope he does. So if you reassess the financial strategies across the league, I think the Garrett's extension could prompt teams to reevaluate their overall salary cap strategies. What I was meaning by that, I didn't go into great detail, is the percentage per player per position. We might see a shakeup now. We might see remember how running backs were kind of like assaulted a few years ago? Like all of the teams seemed to come together and they weren't going to pay running backs, and you had all these running backs on the free agency market and nobody was getting paid. That's the way that these owners influence the pay scale for these players. They're just going to let them all hit the market and no one's going to pay them. So we'll see what happens. But I think that we're going to see a shakeup by next season. Here's my final thoughts. Now, this isn't the final thoughts because I'm going to have to read them from a different article here because I couldn't post them all. If I posted them all, it would have just been a wildly opinionated article. And I didn't really want it to be like that to a degree. You guys already know I am an opinionated person. I have a lot of opinions, but I bring it from a place of fact, right? That's the biggest. It's the biggest thing to me is that I try to do it from a place of fact and research and if I don't, then I probably should just shut the hell up, right? I mean, it doesn't do anybody any good just to have another opinion. But my thoughts on this article is that from my perspective, Brad Holmes faces a challenging situation with Aiden. The rapid escalation of edge rusher salaries followed by Garrett's extension complicates the Lions' future at the position. While Hutchinson is undoubtedly a talented player, he has yet to demonstrate the consistent impact that Garrett has shown throughout his career. Hutchinson's multi-sack games, while impressive, they often came against less formidable competition. For instance, his standout performances against the Washington Commanders and other teams were influenced by factors such as injuries on the opposing offensive line and or subpar quarterback play, and that was in 2022. While I recognize Hutchinson's motor, his character, and potential for high-level play, I do remain skeptical of his status as an elite edge rusher due to inconsistency. Myles Garrett has consistently delivered dominant performances week in and week out, showcasing his ability to win one-on-one matchups and navigate double teams effectively. In contrast, Hutchinson has yet to establish that level of reliability. If, and I should have put when, Hutchinson can bounce back in 2025, it may become increasingly difficult for the Lions to retain him while also keeping other key contributors. Ultimately, Holmes may need to identify a rookie quarterback capable of leading the team by 2027 to navigate these financial complexities successfully. Man, it is crazy, Detroit fan, man. They go off talking about all sorts of random stuff in here. It's nuts. They love the chat. That's why we're going to have the new chat here on Substack. It's nuts. But it's all right. People have fun in here. So here's my real final take on Aiden. So outside of that article, again, please check it out at Detroit Football Journal. Make sure we understand it's Detroit Football Journal. And share it with a friend, man. Let's get some more subscribers over there. All the freebies. I'll do freebie stuff quite a bit. So here's my real final take. When I was digging, of course, I was going to post all this, but I'm like, nah, no way. I'm not going to waste everybody's time. So in my opinion, look, Brad is in a no-win situation right now. No win with Aiden. You have this meteoric rise of salary for Garrett and Crosby. You have an extension that's looming for Aidan Hutchinson, who is also rehabbing from a crazy injury. You cannot make an argument right now that supports Aiden getting paid $40 million. You just can't. And if you do, if you are saying that he's worth $40 million, I would probably say that it's for a couple of reasons. One, you're a U of M fan, right? And you just love Aiden. Nothing wrong with that. Two, maybe you just think that money grows on trees. Because if you pay a guy like Aiden $40 million, again, that's like paying Amon-Ra $30 million. How can you have all these players making max deals? You can't. So if we were to be realistic here for just a moment, Aiden is a good football player, but he is nowhere near the game changer that Myles Garrett has proven to be on every single down. And it's not just a first down sack, right? We're talking game-changing plays that Myles executes year in and year out. Now, he hasn't been on a great team. That's why he's wanted out of there. Could you imagine, if Myles was on this squad, he'd be a totally different football player. This team would win a lot of games, for sure. But that's what I'm saying about Aiden. Like, when is he going to grow into the elite football player. Maybe it was this last season that we were going to see it. Maybe we are finally going to see him grow into that next level. And you know what? Sometimes it takes players, 3 years to do it, or 3 seasons to do it. Unfortunately, he suffered a nasty injury. But when I go back and look at like his multi-sack games, which I looked at a few of them today, he had 3 versus Washington. This is 2022. 3 versus Washington, 2 versus the Cowboys, 2 versus Green Bay. In 2023, he had 3 versus Dallas, 2 versus the Falcons, 2 versus the Vikings. And then in 2024, right, week 2, he came out blazing against the Bucs, had 4.5 sacks against the Bucs. Now, when you look at that, I want you to remember one name. I want you to remember, when you look at this, I want you to remember a few things, actually. Against, teams like Dallas or the Bucs, and I think even the Cowboys and Washington, I want to say Aiden was going up against at least second-tier tackles and or third-tier tackles and guards in some of those games. So all of his biggest games, it seems like they came against an offensive line that either wasn't ranked very high, had a lot of injuries, or he had poor quarterback play. And, I mean, come on, you've got to look at that and say, why can't he produce against the best offensive lines? I go back to his college days, which I don't normally do when I talk, NFL football, but if you go back to his last season, he got sacks against the offensive lines that were ranked 80th to 120th out of the FBS. I think there was only 132 schools at that time that was in the FBS, if I'm not mistaken. So 80th to 120th. He ended up getting a few sacks against Ohio State and Michigan State, which I think Ohio State was ranked 3rd, and I think MSU was maybe in the top 20. Can't remember now, but those were like the 2 best schools that he went up against that year where he produced a couple of sacks. I think he had 5 against ranked teams, 5 total out of the 19 that he had against ranked teams. But all the rest came against these unranked or terribly ranked offensive lines. And that same type of situation is kind of continued throughout his professional career so far, is that he struggles against some of these better offensive lines. And I think that it's his arm length, personally. I think that's what a lot of it is that he can't disengage. He doesn't navigate double teams well. And he hasn't. I mean, the tape will tell you that. When he does get double teamed, he just doesn't navigate it very well. He uses a spin move quite often. We need to see more pass rush moves out of Aiden. The only reason why I'm saying all this is when you look at Myles Garrett, the difference here is he does navigate double teams. He is double teamed on almost every play, and he's still getting to the quarterback, on average 13 times a year. Double digit sacks every single season, except his rookie season where he only played in 11 games. That's the difference between an elite edge rusher and a really good football player. Like there's measurements to this. Aiden's just not there yet. So I have real heartburn right now with the fact that if Aiden even gets anywhere close to this, then I'm going to start questioning what Brad Holmes is doing. But until that time, I think he's doing all right. Okay, breaking news. Detroit Lions are releasing edge rushers Zadarius Smith versus Jeremy Fowler at ESPN. That cannot be. That would not be good. That would not be good. And it is happening. Yeah, that's not good at all. That's not smart. Unless the Lions are looking to bring somebody in. Hold the phone here. Let's bring up Zadarius Smith's contract because I don't think that the Lions are going to save much money here. Sometimes I question why we do dumb things. Wow, this chat is flying. I can't even keep up right now. Okay, so if the Lions release him prior to June 1, they're going to save about $5.8 million this year. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, they will save $5.8 million with a release this year prior to June 1. If they would have waited, then they only would have had a cap hit of 1.8 this year and then a 6.6 next year. So they would have lost more money, but it would have been next year, not this year. Right? Next year, not this year. So by releasing him, I mean, why couldn't they find a trade partner? Like, seriously, you couldn't find a trade partner? Like who's not going to pick up Zadarius Smith tomorrow? Like, legit tomorrow. That just doesn't make any sense. And why wouldn't they have, reworked a contract with Smith? This just doesn't make any sense. So, Trey Hendrickson for me is obviously the player that I would love to see in Detroit. He is the guy. Harold Landry, I talked about him a couple weeks ago and how good that he can be, but that contract's going to have to be very affordable because his last deal is around $17 million a year. Same thing with Trey, though. I mean, how are you not going to pay Trey $35 million, $30 million? It doesn't make sense to me. If you're going to, there's no way you can keep Aiden at some point. There's just no way. So 2025, right now, Trey Hendrickson, his cap hit is 18.7. There's no way he walks into Detroit without an extension. There's no way. It won't work. He won't play. And I guarantee it. So unless the Lions are bringing in somebody that is as good or better than Z, this is a head scratcher. Because right now with Aiden and Z and Davenport and Pascal, I mean, you had 3 of the top 32 edge rushers in the league last year prior to the season, their rankings. I mean, he just said he wanted to have 3 or 4 really deep guys in the edge rusher department, right? Why would you release Z? It doesn't make a bit of sense. Keep the dude. Bring somebody else in through the draft. Davenport will have 10 sacks this year. He might if he stays healthy. He might. God, if Z goes to the Bears, that would be bad. Yeah, I don't think Davenport would be on IR. I think he'll be all right. I think he'll be fine. I mean, obviously last year what happened was it was not a freak accident, man. That was intentional. Okay, Attila, were you being serious with that? I just saw you said something about Trey in Detroit. Were you just joking? Because there was someone saying something about that the other day, but it was clearly a Boston. It was a Boston airport. And it wasn't even Trey. Oh, let's see here. Give me 1 second here. Yeah, I don't see anything. I don't see anything popping with Trey. Doesn't mean it can't happen. All right, let's take a look at NFL free agent edge rushers that are available. All right, so Josh Sweat. I haven't heard if Philly has re-signed him yet. You got a defensive tackle, so not an edge rusher. Milton Williams, it's available. Khalil Mack. You have Chase Young, Joey Bosa, Hassan Reddick. Azeez Ojulari, who is still the highest on my list. He's the one that makes the most sense cap-wise, fit-wise. I mean, he's a hell of a football player. What do you guys think of Malcolm Kuntz? I saw that the Bills cut Von Miller. I don't know if I'm real high on Von Miller. He's a little bit older, right? And it just doesn't make a lot of sense in Detroit, but that doesn't mean Brad doesn't think that way. I mean, Von is old. He's older than dirt. Hassan Reddick, I don't think makes a lot of sense. I really don't. He's a little bit small for me, but he's also been someone that's been producing at a high level. Khalil Mack at 34 years old, look, you better be getting some sort of a cheap deal on Khalil Mack. And I know he's been producing, but he's going to have to be on a cheap deal. And I don't see Josh Sweat happening. I just don't. It'd be crazy if it did, but it just don't. Other notable guys that apparently are still on the block here. Matthew Judon, DeMarcus Lawrence. Josh Uche. I'm not seeing any. Here, let me pull up my transaction list. Where is it? Where is it? One second, people. I don't see anything on the transaction list right now either. That's weird. Okay, so I guess who are you looking for? Who do you want? Who makes the most sense? I think we've already discussed, this whole Myles Garrett, Aidan Hutchinson thing. I know a lot of you probably don't agree with some of my takes here, and that's okay. That's totally okay. It is what it is. But let's get Zadarius Smith pulled up. Let's get the video done. Let's talk about it. Looks like I got to write another damn article, huh? Keeping me busy. I got to give a lot of props to these guys in the media because I don't know how. Of course, they don't do podcasts all the time like I do, but I don't know how they write like this and so quickly. I'm a pretty fast typer, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to write it super quickly here. All right, I think that'll fit on the screen. All right, let's get into it. All right, the Detroit Lions just announced about 4 minutes ago that the Lions are releasing Zadarius Smith. What is going on? Is this a necessary move? According to Mike Payton, this sucks, and I would agree. The Detroit Lions needed to take a swing at the trade deadline this past November after losing Aidan Hutchinson, and they did, and when they traded with the Cleveland Browns for Zadarius Smith. Now, Smith made an impact in Detroit immediately. He became the team's lead pass rusher, and in 8 games, he put up 36 pressures and 5 sacks. Not Aidan Hutchinson numbers, but not bad at all. Matter of fact, to comment on that, not Aidan Hutchinson numbers, let me remind you guys of something. When I did this previous article, I cut some things out of it, but there is not one team out there other than the Lions from last year that had multiple defensive ends on the roster that were ranked in the top 32. The Lions, obviously the Eagles were the other team. The Minnesota Vikings had 2, and then there was another team. But nobody outside of 2 or 3 teams had true defensive ends on their roster that each had more than 10 sacks apiece. And I think that that's an important stat because it doesn't happen very often. So when he says not Aidan Hutchinson numbers, well, there's no other team out there that's doing it either with their second guy. Now, obviously, the expectation from fans with the Lions would hold on to Smith in 25. Well, that won't be happening. Now, the Lions have released Smith, according to Jeremy Fowler and his sources, that the Lions plan to release pass rusher Zadarius Smith Obviously, this is a big one. Like Z's smile is infectious, right? The way that he played, I thought he played very well given the situation that he was in. Now, the problem with Smith's contract structure, he was in line to get paid $8.99 million in bonuses on the third day of the new league year, which is next week on March 15th. The bonuses would have jumped Smith's salary up to $11 million in 2025 had he played for the Lions. But there's more. If he had not re-signed after 2025, he would have counted $5.242 million against the cap in 2026, even though he's not on the team. It's because of the void years tacked onto his deal, which created another issue on their own. It makes it cheaper up front, but boil it all down, the Lions would have to eventually pay the tab on the money kicked down, the end of the road, which is what void years ensure. Now, if the Lions had re-signed Smith after 2025, then the void years would have been tacked onto the end of whatever length of the new deal represented. That is a lot of money for a 33-year-old edge rusher with the Lions, or while the Lions are in good standing with cap space next season. This is a lot of money that they could clear off the books to help them get younger at the position. The way out of this was parting ways with him before the new league year starts. They now don't have to pay any dead money, and they save over $5.7 million against the cap. The Lions can now have a lot easier time getting things done without that $11 million contract on the books. Okay, so it makes sense. It doesn't make sense. It makes sense from a Caps perspective. It also makes sense from the perspective that Zadarius Smith could just come back to Detroit. He could. They could have a gentleman's deal. I mean, he doesn't have to sign with anybody. He's a free agent. He's not restricted. He can do whatever he wants to do. And for that reason, he could come back. We don't know yet. We've seen these types of things happen before. So I'm not totally out on the fact that this could happen. The other thing, with that is, if that was going to happen, then why wouldn't they have just restructured his entire deal? So I guess I'm more leaning, less than 25% positive that there's even a chance that Zadarius Smith comes back. He's going to end up with another team. Otherwise, they could have restructured his deal and been done with it. There's a difference between an extension and a complete restructure. So if they would have restructured it, it's basically taking that contract and turning it into a new contract with new language, which obviously didn't happen. So Zadarius Smith, man, wish you nothing but the best. Probably won't see you back this year. Honestly, hope we don't have to play against him, in a situation in the NFC North, but there's always that possibility. The only other team that he hasn't been to is the Bears, I believe. He played for the Vikes. He played for the Packers. I think the Bears are the only team he hasn't played for in the NFC North. Could be a play there. Obviously Ben Johnson's over there. Could be a play in New York over with the Jets. Just don't know. But I would say that those are two likely spots right now for Zadarius Smith to end up because there's relationships there. Otherwise, hell, he could end up back in Cleveland. Who knows? He could. It's all possible. How do we replace him? We have Aiden, who's hurt, still rehabbing. We have Marcus Davenport, who should be good by now, but obviously he's going to have a lot of work in front of him. We have Josh Paschal, who was put into a hybrid role last year, then switched outside. Mekhi Wingo, who is still recovering. Now to go to the interior side, Lee McNeil is going to be out at least until what we've heard, October. The Lions need a lot of defensive front help, a lot. So one of two things has to happen. They're either going deep into this draft and they're going to pull as many defensive tackles and edge rushers as they can out of it, or something is cooking in Brad Holmes' kitchen right now. So Zadarius Smith out of Detroit. I'd like to know in the comments below, who do you want to replace him? Because I just don't think that there's much more the Lions are going to be able to do given the incredible, cap considerations right now with these last two extensions. Even if you get Aidan Hutchinson done, these edge rushers are going to be expensive. As the cap rises, so do the contracts. As the contracts rise, so does free agency. And free agency dollars being spent, what we've already seen, has not been cheap. So Zadarius Smith, he's out of Detroit as of today, Sunday, March 9th. Okay. Gotta pay Hutch, says Jay Cruisin. Gotta pay Hutch. All right, so here's my short list. Here's my short list. Let me get this pulled back up. Man, Brad, what are we doing? I can only imagine someone right now that's probably melting down. I can see it already. Let's see. Fun stuff. Okay, so if I'm going to go with... If I'm going to go probably, I guess, least expensive to most expensive. Or I guess expense that makes sense is what I'll go with. Expense that makes sense. Azeez Ojulari is number one on my list right now. Azeez Ojulari is number one on my list. I don't think it's going to be easy to bring him in, and I don't think that the contract... I don't think the contract is going to be extremely big either. So give me your top five. Give me your top five. If you have top five, give me your top five edge rushers right now that are on the block starting tomorrow, right? The free agency block that are available. I don't think that we're trading with somebody. I think that it's going to be free agent and then draft. So Azeez Ojulari, he is my number one, about 7.6 million. When you look at what the Lions just saved with Myles or with Zadarius Smith, you save 5.8. You can commit another 2 or 3 million a year to Azeez Ojulari, if that's what it's going to take to get him. Now, Derek Barnes, I did not expect for him to sign a big 3-year for $25 million deal. Like no way did I ever expect about an 8.7, we'll call it $9 million deal going to Barnes. It's a ton of money. It's more than Alex Anzalone signed for. And I think it's a ton of money. It really is. Zach Bond, I can't remember what he just signed for, but might have been close. Zach Bond, he signed $51 million over 3 years. So that's twice as much as what Derek Barnes signed, but $34 million guaranteed. To me, that's not a bad deal for him at all. That would not have been a bad deal for the Lions. So I guess for me, it's Azeez Ojulari is number one. $8 million a year. If you can get him at 3 years, call it $28 million. At the most, at the highest end, $28 million, 3 years. I think that Brad likes to do 3-year deals. As a matter of fact, I think NFL players love 3-year deals. It gives them an opportunity to sign another bigger deal later by continually signing only 3-year deals. Now, Malcolm Kuntz, I have not been high on. Now, he's 27. He's a couple years older than Azeez. He's coming from the Raiders. He's been one of the most intriguing free agent prospects in this process so far. He could have an incredibly competitive market. There could be a lot of people after him, a lot of teams, or it could be underwhelming. We just don't know yet. Now, he missed the entire 2024 season due to a knee injury. That sounds like a Brad Holmes kind of guy. Someone that's coming off of an injury. In 2023, though, he had a career-high 43 tackles and 8 sacks. And that came after recording just 12 tackles and 2 sacks in his first 2 NFL seasons. So he's kind of all over the place, right? He's didn't do a whole lot, then had one good season, and then a knee injury. So I'm not so sure here. What is his value is the question. What is it now that Myles Garrett's resetting the entire market for everybody? Okay, so I don't know how Malcolm Kuntz is worth $20 million a year after having one good season, coming off a knee injury, according to Spot Track, a 2-year, $40 million deal. I don't see it. But Azeez Ojulari, who has been fairly consistent, had 6 sacks last year, 3 the year before, 6 the year before that, 8 the year before that. Played in 11 games last year, 11 the year before that, 7 the year before that, 17 the year before that. So he's been fairly consistent. Yeah, he's missed a few games. He's only worth $7.6 million. Now he is considered an outside linebacker. He was grabbed in the 2nd round, whereas Malcolm Kuntz was a 3rd rounder. That just doesn't make any sense to me there. Okay, so a cheap option is Josh Uche, or a cheaper option. I'm not sure why his contract value, again, is so deflated. Now, he's been in the league since 2020. He's been averaging about 13, 14 games a season. Didn't get any significant starts last year. Only played in 200 snaps. So didn't get much time at all. Only about 18.2% of the snaps. Had 2 sacks. So that is a guy that we know that Brad Holmes has history with, as far as he did bring him in during a pre-draft process. Josh Uche could be a really great depth signing, but again, he's not someone that, in my opinion, is going to catapult this defense to the next level. I think he could have a good season as a high rotational player. Great depth, but yeah, if you bring him in at, $5-6 million a year, I mean, it has to be more than Davenport. So let's call it $6 million a year. And you get him on a 2-year deal or a 3-year deal or even a 1-year contender deal. There's a possibility there. I think Josh Uche would probably be my 4th, right? I think Azeez Ojulari is probably number 2 for me. We'll go Uche is probably number 4 for me. Obviously, Trey Hendrickson is number 1, but I think the money it's just not going to make sense. Especially with the kind of money that just went out. Now, if you guys remember on Wednesday in the morning show, I told you guys that Thursday we should have some action. Going into Friday, it should start to liven up. And then obviously over the weekend, there's going to be a lot of movement. Now, that's just a great way of saying Brad was kind of waiting to see what was going to happen. Who was going to get released, who was going to be available, hold all the chips close to the vest, and be the last one to do anything. Smart move, because now he knows what's in front of him. What am I missing here? Jerry says, I must be missing something. Jerry says the last team that spent big and actually won were the Broncos when they got, was that Andre Ware and Aqib Talib? And they fell off a cliff after they won. Yeah, that's the way it goes. You spend a bunch of money, and it doesn't mean you're going to win. Nick P, to answer that question, when did Carlton Davis, when did that happen? I mean, they can trade with a team whenever they want, right? It's except into the season, right? Post the trade deadline. But before the legal tampering period, I think that we knew that Carlton Davis was coming that morning on Monday. It was Amik Robertson that I think went into Tuesday or Wednesday with a couple of calls. But I think Carlton was on that Monday. I'd have to go back and look at my videos. So, again, I'm not seeing any of your top 5 lists in here, people. Tell me who you guys want. I'm interested. I've been lazy on doing videos, so I'm really interested in what you guys want to do. All right, so if we keep looking here. Is anybody interested in Josh Sweat? And the only reason why I ask you that is because I don't believe in his production. When you look at last year, he had, what does that say? Solo tackles. So last year he had what? 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's like 7 sacks in the regular season. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Nope, 8. 8 sacks in the regular season. And then 2.5 in the Super Bowl. So his production, I mean, being the number 1 edge rusher, that's not even Aiden production, right? But his money is going to be up there. What he's going to command on the free agency market is going to be up there because he just notched himself a Super Bowl ring. So I'm out. I'm out on Sweat. I think it's too much money. Yeah, something like that, Nick. I think that it was somewhere around the first day, that Monday. Jerry says Ojulari, Judon, Allen, Hargrave, and then Mack for his top 5. I'm not sure, J-Rod. Just go to Spotrac and type his name in the search bar. Ojulari. Here you go. I'll give it to you. Here you go. Here's Ojulari right there in the chat. I'll start doing that. I don't use the chat good enough. I got to start dropping stuff in there. So Josh Sweat, I'm out on. I don't believe in his production. And there was a comment I just saw, something about got to wait to, I think we got to see who we draft. Oh, that's Riley. Yeah, I think free agency, obviously you have to figure out in free agency what you're going to get before the draft, because the draft, you're going to backfill what you didn't get in free agency. The Lions can't wait. We definitely can't wait. Not after releasing Zadarius Smith. We are now empty on the right side because Davenport, I don't believe, is our starter. There's just no way. I thought Deo Odeingbo, I thought he got re-signed. Didn't he get re-signed? I guess not. He's not signed yet. Dante151, is Brad going to try and trade up in the draft? I don't think so. I really don't think so. I've gone through it in 2 different scenarios here. If we do trade up, it's going to require a player probably to trade up early in this draft. And I think that they could get to pick 20 with doing some light work. Like they could probably trade with the Broncos, giving up a 3rd round pick, probably a 2nd round pick next year. They could probably move up with the Broncos. I also feel that it makes more sense to move back. I'm starting to hear more around the media landscape that the Giants and the Browns, both looking to do something different in this draft. Now that they signed Myles Garrett, you might see where the Browns might pass on a quarterback. They still might take Abdul Carter, or they could take Travis Hunter, and then they want to get back in at the back end of the 1st round. So I think there's more possibility we trade back. Same thing with the Giants. They may not take a quarterback, and they may try to get in the back end of the 1st round. So Deo Odeingbo, he's got a big market cap value according to Spotrac, which is $16 million a year. I think that's too rich. I think that's too rich for Brad's blood right now. But then again, depending on how you put this contract together, it could make sense. Now, he only had 3 sacks last year. He had 8th year, the year before that, 5 the year before that. He's played in all 17 games the last 3 seasons, so his availability is good. He is a former 2nd-round pick. And I just think that number is way too high. I think it's way too high. I'm not sold on his number. But when I do go back and look at the prospect profile, you know, size, height, weight, speed. He's 6'5", 285, 35 and a quarter inch arms, 10 and 1/8 inch hands. So he fits, I mean, he fits it to a T. He absolutely fits it. He's got that perfect size to do whatever he wants to do on the outside. I don't know. All right, I'm going to put Deo as my number 3. Yeah, I don't see Bosa coming to Detroit. I mean, it is a possibility. It could be a cheaper option for the Lions. He's my number 5. I don't like his injury history. I don't like his production at all. But for a low priced option, if he's under 10 million for one season, then yeah, you could probably do something with it. But I would have rather seen Zadarius Smith stick around for another season and spend that money on Zadarius Smith. But Joey's not, he's not close to what he used to be. So it would have to be a lot lower than 10. I definitely do not want Josh Reynolds back. I think Josh got himself in trouble. He's in trouble. You know what I mean? Like he at the club and everything else that happened last year. I think good riddance is good riddance for a reason. How about Joseph Osai? Anybody interested in Joseph Osai? Or Osei, how you say his last name? Man, we are going to have a fun morning show tomorrow. I'll tell you what. A lot going on. So Joseph is only 24 years old, right? He is a former 3rd-round pick. Now, over the last couple of seasons, he had 5 sacks last year, played in all 17 games, only 3 starts. He's a 50%er, so he's a rotational guy. 46 tackles. Right now, his projected value is in the low 3 to 6 million range per season. So again, if you're looking for depth, he's probably a good depth guy. If you're looking for a game changer, probably not this guy. There's only a couple of guys that are going to be game changers. And that's going to be Trey Hendrickson. I mean, you could say Josh Sweat, but I'm not high on that train. You know, I got a question for you guys. I'm going to probably bring this up tomorrow too. I got a question. This is more for Brad Holmes. So Brad, if you're listening, which I doubt, the last couple of seasons you said edge rushers are not available. And that's why the Lions haven't gone out and replaced or found additional edge rushers, because they're not available. And then this year happens. They're all available, right? Well, Myles really never was. Max really never was. We knew that. But Trey's available. He's also pushing 30 years old. DeMarcus Lawrence is available. Matthew Judon is available. Now, DeMarcus Lawrence is also pushing 32 years old. And he's also commanding probably 10 to 14 million a year. So you'd probably out on that too. So there's a rash of old guys, right, that are available right now. But he said that nobody was available. And now we have a bevy of options. And my question is, what are we doing? Are we trying to get younger? Or are we trying to get better? Or both? Because I think if we're trying to get better, bringing in Davenport as an option for the summer, you've got to make the roster. You're a great depth guy. Makes sense. I agree with it. If you're trying to get better, I don't think releasing Zadarius Smith makes sense. I understand the money aspect of it. From that side, it makes sense. Hopefully, there's an option that he comes back. Maybe not. But we just got worse in a hurry. Okay, you bring in a rookie this year. Let's say you jump all the way up to pick 10. And you pull the best edge rusher not named Abdul Carter. It's still a rookie. Last year, I said that Jared Verse was going to be the best rookie edge. He was. That doesn't happen very often, right? It is so few and far between that a rookie comes in and does anything. You know, they may have a good season, but they're not going to be a game changer from day one, typically. No rookie. Few and far between does that happen. I mean, if you look at last year's draft, how many rookies were game changers? Maybe 10, 15, 20 at the most, even 20. That's not a whole lot. You know, 20 out of 300 prospects or 20 out of 300 that are drafted, that's not a lot for me. It's not pushing the envelope. Less than one player per team. Yeah, Black Lion, Zadarius Smith was released. Yeah. Hopefully something's brewing, buddy. Hopefully something's brewing. So I guess that's my question for Brad is you said that they weren't available and now they are. What are we doing? And I'm not saying pass rush edge is the end all be all. You know me, you know where I stand on that. I think that last year with Davenport, we would have been just fine had he not had his arm ripped off. I think we'd have been just fine. I mean, we were one of the top defenses in the league through the first 8 weeks of the season. Both games that Davenport played in, you know, the Lions played extremely well. The one game that he didn't play in that Aiden had, 4.5 sacks against the Bucs, we lose. So I think that it shows you that sacks don't matter, especially for independents. If you would have had 5 or 6 sacks spread across that whole defensive line, probably would have been a different outcome. But we only had one guy winning that game, that day, not 5 or 6 guys winning that day. Full Slate Farm says, I told everyone in the chat last week that Smith was going to get cut, hopefully brought back. I hope you're right, man. I hope you're right. Super Bowl Wilson, I like it, says Zadarius is only effective when the Lions have the lead and no threat of the run. Yeah, so Z's not great against the run. He's not a good run defender. He's more of the Aiden, style where he's better utilized, I think, to try to get after the passer. More of a probably a second and a third down guy, not an every down guy. And I think that when you're trying to get better, you're looking for every down guys right now, guys that can set the edge, guys that can get after the passer. You want to do both, but setting the edge is most important. Shutting down that run game is most important. Okay. Chase Young. Now we've talked about Chase Young on this channel many times. I've never been in his corner. Now, going on 3 seasons, Chase has been talked about to be a Detroit Lion forever, right? It seems like every other week there's a video popping up about Chase Young. I will say this. If he has not landed here yet, and there's been plenty of opportunity because he's moved around to like 3 or 4 teams in the last 3 or 4 seasons, or 3 seasons, I don't think he's coming. And I don't think that he's also a game changer for us. He's just not. You look at his market value, $17.5 million. Who the hell is going to pay Chase Young $17.5 million? I certainly wouldn't. He had 6 sacks last year. He had 8 the year before, 0 in 2022. He only played in 3 games. 2 in 21, 8 in 2020. So he's had 14 sacks in the last 2 seasons. He's played on average 63% of the snaps. So he's a rotational guy. He's still young. Young is still young. I think he's, 26 years old? Something like that. He's marginally good against the run. Marginally. And that's being nice. He's definitely not elite. Yeah, Derek, I don't know why his value is so high. It doesn't make any sense. This is a Spotrac putting this stuff out there, and their stuff is usually off, but not that off. Not that far. So I guess when earlier when I asked about the question of, you said they weren't available, so we wouldn't be able to bring anybody in. Now they're available. What are we doing? Because if we do have any money, which we really don't, when you look at the Aiden situation, I think that that's more of the question that needs to be answered. What are you doing with Aiden? If you extend Aiden right now, that is what I'm going to call in question for Brad. I think that's the biggest mistake, more so than bringing back a Marcus Davenport. And I know a lot of you won't like that take, and that's okay. But more so than bringing back Marcus Davenport, because Marcus, if he gets hurt day one, he might cost us $2.5 million. Who cares, right? That happens all the time in the NFL. Matter of fact, big name players get injured, and it costs teams tens of millions of dollars. Tens of millions. Deshaun Watson just cost the Browns like $300 million, and he barely played at all. So it happens, right? Now, for Aiden, the best way that you can affect this team right now is to pick up that fifth, use that money that you still have right now, and go out and bring somebody in. You're going to have to play a little bit of cap gymnastics over the next couple of seasons. But that's about the only way it's going to work until you know what you have in Aiden, and then you can extend him. Foxboy says, I swear to God, if we resign Emmanuel Mosley. I'm so glad you brought up that name. And thank you for the super chat, buddy. Appreciate it. I'm so glad that you just brought up. So Davenport, to me, is now the new Mosley. Right? They brought Davenport in because they knew he would work out, right? That he had the skills to do it. Freak accident, right? Freak injury. But now I think that Davenport is that Mosley guy. I don't think Mosley's coming back. I would be extremely, I hate to use the word PO'd, but yeah, I'd be very disappointed if Mosley came back. Let's see. See if there's anything else popping right now. Oh boy. Huh. What? So you remember earlier when I said that Myles Garrett will probably go back to the Browns? Or I'm sorry, not Myles Garrett. Zadarius Smith probably go back to the Browns? I just saw something where they said that it's a possibility. That's just got to be fluff right now. A lot of fluff. Clearing space for Carlton Davis. So let's talk about Carlton for a moment, and then I'm going to jump off. So Carlton Davis, I don't think I gave you guys my top 5. Let me give my top 5 real quick. So if we can get Trey Hendrickson, great. I think that the number is way too high. Like it makes no sense to bring in Trey at 35 million a year because he's not coming to us on his last year of his contract without an extension. So the only way he becomes a Detroit Lion is if they get an extension done. And obviously that could be the writing on the wall for Aiden. It could be a 5th-year option for Aiden, and they're going to play it out, and whatever happens, happens. We're going to end up losing some guys at some point. I can't imagine the Lions ever paying Aiden $40 million a year. But I've been wrong many times in my life. I'll probably be wrong on this one. I just wouldn't do it. I'd rather get young at the position again and continue to develop guys and continue to re-sign, your guys if you can. But if you can't, you can't. So Trey is my number 1. I just don't think it's going to happen. And if it does happen, great. Azeez Ojulari is my true number one because that one I think can happen. And I think it does make a lot of sense. Malcolm Kuntz was number 4 for me only because I think that's a Brad Holmes kind of move. That you're probably going to save a ton of money. He was injured last year. Still has a lot of upside. But that's no different than a Marcus Davenport. There's no difference other than the age factor. He's a little bit younger. I think he has a little bit more skill than Davenport does, but you don't know what you don't know after an injury. That's the tough thing about it. I don't think Hassan Reddick makes any sense. Joey Bosa, I'll throw him in at number 5 on a cheap deal. If it's under, $8 million a year on a contender deal, it could make sense. But again, this is a guy that you hopefully rotate. If you have him rotating and saving his energy, it could work. Khalil Mack, same thing. There's no way on this green earth that I would be paying Khalil Mack north of $10 million to come to play for the Lions. Just wouldn't do it. I think it is a huge mistake. He's too old. I understand that he's still producing, but he's 34. He's about to be 35 years old. I think it's a big mistake. Last year he had what, 1, 1.5, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 6, 7 sacks last year. That's it. That's not enough production for me to have to, and that's not just sacks, but it's not enough production for me to warrant a big payday for, a guy that's about to retire. I think you have to get young. Not Chase Young, but you know what I'm saying. You have to get young. Josh Uche, I'll throw him in at number 3 simply because he still has a lot of life left. He does play outside linebacker in a 3-4 defense. He could be a fit for the Lions in our new defense. It just depends on what the Lions are going to do. But he knows how to get after the passer. He's big enough to be able to play on the outside. So I think that was it, right? Trey and Azeez really are my number 1, 2. Josh at 3. We'll throw Bosa in there at 5. And Matthew Judon. I'll throw him in there at 4. That's it. That's my top 5. Yeah, Nick P., I agree, man. Khalil Mack's great against the run. He is. As a backer, though. All right, so Carlton Davis. Now, there was some news that was just popping a little earlier. Carlton obviously said that as free agency approaches, this time, he is not going to settle for less. I'm not quite sure where he's going with that and that has nothing to do with the Lions. He wasn't a free agent. He was traded last year. So his free agency, that was dealt by, I believe, the Bucs, right? So in free agency, they had to redo his deal. And I have no idea what happened. I haven't even looked at it. But right now, Carlton is, 3 years ago, obviously, Carlton Davis blinked, right? He was set to enter free agency as one of the top cornerbacks in the market. He preemptively signed with the Bucs, choosing a familiar and secure setting and chasing another Super Bowl ring and possibly leaving money on the table. So that's what he means by this. Now, he also, once he was traded to the Lions, and once again, he's now headed for free agency, I think he's learned his lesson. So all the stuff that he put out over this past week, it's not an indictment against the Lions. He's just saying, look, I learned my lesson. I was chasing a ring. I left money on the table. I'm not doing that again. Fool me once, fool me twice. You know how it goes. He fooled himself. but he was going after the ring. He was being team friendly, wanted to stay home. Now he wants to cash in. He's in the last few seasons of a prime career, and he wants to cash in. So here's what he had said to The Athletic on Saturday. He said, quote, "I feel like last time I just kind of panicked. I was younger, and my mindset was, I need to go ahead and just choose. At the time, the thinking was, this is the offer, and the more you wait, the more the number is going to go down. Yeah, that can happen. But teams know your value, and right now I'm playing my best football. This time, I ain't going to settle for less." I respect the hell out of Davis. I do. I'm glad that, at 28 years old, he's recognized I have to do this for me too. I can't just give a team-friendly deal to the Lions and I get it. I understand it. As much as I would love to see him back on the squad this year, which, that's a far change from where I was last year, because last year coming in, I was not high on him at all. The injury history, I panicked on it. I looked at it and I'm like, goodness, this dude's missed 23% of his games. He's been consistently injured. And as a corner, that's not good, right? Because corners are the most injured players in the NFL. For other positions, it's less likely to have similar injuries year in and year out. So I was less afraid of DJ Reader coming off that second quad injury. Highly unlikely to happen the first time, but 2 times? It can't happen a third time. Manuel Mosley, I knew from the jump, that dude is injured. He's going to stay injured. He's not coming back. And that's the way it shook out. I'm less likely to take an injured corner. But it worked out. Carlton played, pretty much the entire season. He got banged up a couple of times. You can never expect a broken jaw. I mean, you never hear that. Another freak injury for the Lions last year. So anyway, Davis, having played, played out the 3-year contract that he had signed at $45 million in 2022. He's obviously looking for more, much more. He said he wants to be paid like a top 10 or a top 15 cornerback. So according to the most recent reports on salaries by Spotrac, let's take a look. Okay. Okay. Oh, this is really small. I don't even know if you guys are going to be able to see this. But the average, so the annual average for a top 10 corner right now is 19.1 million. We know that. So if you were to take that and multiply it by 3, you're looking at almost a $60 million deal for Carlton. He wants a 3-year, probably $52 to $60 million deal. That's a ton of money. That is an absolute ton of money. When I'm looking at the cap here, each team is averaging it's all over the place. Anywhere from 6% to 22% of total cap on their cornerback room, on the overall secondary room. The Lions right now, only 8.33% of their total cap is committed to this year's cap. So averaging $2.3 million per player, $20.7 million on the books this year. Amik Robertson is the highest paid at $6.4 million. Kirby Joseph right behind him at 3.6. Terrion Arnold at 3.25. Brian Branch at 2.18. Ennis Rakestraw at 1.48. And Stanley Thomas Oliver at a vet minimum 1.1 million. So that you add all that up, and that's 20.7 million roughly this season. And the Lions are 26th right now as far as their ranking for cornerback room. If you were to add somebody like Carlton Davis on a big deal like that, yeah, you could make it work. The Lions have the room. What about Kirby? How you gonna pay Kirby now? How you gonna pay Branch next year? You definitely can't have 3 guys making that kind of money. There's just no way. There's just no way. Uh-oh. I got more breaking news going on here. Let's see. What's going on? Someone just said something about Hendrickson. What's going on with Hendrickson? Okay. All right. So anyway, back to this. The Lions have a lot of room. They do, but they have guys that they need to get signed. And if we look at that corners, you know, the top corners on the market, I do believe we need one vet. And look, I think that Amik played great, but I do we really want Amik being our starting left corner? Do we? I mean, he played great for a couple of games, but can he maintain an entire season? I'm not so sure. And I'm not doubting Amik. I mean, anyone that had doubted him last year saw what happened. He had a great season. DJ Reed, I don't think makes any sense. I think he's too small. Charvarius Ward, he's coming through a very, very, very difficult situation right now. Lost his daughter last year. He's obviously looking for a change of venue. I'm a little bit worried on guys like that. You just don't know if their head's going to hold up. And it's not so much about not wanting to help the player or be there for the player. It's more so he may just decide to hang up the cleats. And then you're out the player, but not so much the money, you know, but then you can't get another player because you just invested in that player. So I'd probably not deal with Charvarius Ward. Darius Slay, look, guy's 34 years old. If you want a guy to come back to be your vet guy, if he wants to play for $7 million a year, great. $8 million a year, great. Anything more than $9 million, no way. No way. That's way too much money to be spending on a 34-year-old. I don't care how good he was last year, because honestly, he didn't have to do a whole lot last year. Carlton Davis. We were just talking about him. He's going to be 29. If you give him a 3-year deal, he's going to be well into 32 and a half, 33 years old by the time that deal is done. I love what he did last season, but I'm probably out. Byron Murphy makes a lot of sense for me. I don't think he's been re-signed yet, but last season he finished with a career high 6 interceptions. He's one of the best ball hawks in the league. Coming from Minnesota, obviously that would be beneficial for the Lions. Over the last 4 seasons, he's had 3+ interceptions in each of the last 3 of the last 4 years. So he allowed a career low 62% passer rating allowed in coverage last season. He also had a career high 69.7 completion rate in coverage. Now, pairing Murphy up with an established veteran would be ideal, but I don't think that that's necessary. I think you put him back there with Terry and Arnold, and you have Amik Robertson as your vet leader, and you have Kirby back there still, and Brian. That's a pretty solid room. It's a pretty scary room. So I like where that one's going. I'm out on Stephon Gilmore. 35 years old. Nope. Heard his name all last year. I'm good. Jonathan Jones, 32 years old. I'm good. Asante Samuel does make sense. This is someone that Brad does have connections with. It is somebody that he did look at in that first draft. Now, he does have the bloodline and the pedigree. Last season, he did not allow a touchdown pass. But he did not have an interception in the first 4 games he played last season. Samuel had stinger symptoms that kept him out last year, and says that he'll be ready to go for the start of the offseason program wherever he ends up. Interesting. Stinger. Must have been a neck issue. So he had a neck injury when the shoulder or the neck is stretched quickly. It compresses the nerves in the brachial plexus. It's common. You get sharp burning, pain in the arm, numbness or tingling, pain in the neck or shoulder. I mean, I deal with that crap every day with my neck, so I can only imagine playing football what that feels like. If he's healthy, he's healthy. But if he's a $3 million an option, a $3 million a year option, you bring that guy in. You know, even if he's a 3-year, $20 million deal, you bring that guy in. He's got more upside, but you still need a vet. We still need a good vet. I think what this is boiling down to is the Lions are probably going to take another corner in this draft. And Asante Samuel is only 5'10", 180 pounds. So, yeah, I'm just not, I don't like the small guys, but that's just me. If you can play bigger, you can play bigger. Adebo, he's a nice option, but he's not even ranked in the top 10 right now for some reason. Now, obviously, I think the connection there is because of the Saints, right? Is that the connection with Adebo? Now, he does have prototypical size. Obviously, 6'1", 129 pounds. He's 25 years old. Last year had an okay year. Coverage grade was a 63.9. Run defense, not so great. But pass rush, for some reason, he was the 6th best corner in the league in the pass rush department. So maybe he was used a little bit off the edge in blitzing. I don't have the stats in front of me to tell what he did and what he didn't do. But he did have 47 tackles. He did have 3 interceptions. He did provide 2 pressures. And he allowed 34 receptions all season. I'm curious how much his contract will be worth. Okay, market value on Paulson Adebo is 11.1 million. So that's probably going to be a 2-year 22 or a 3-year 30. 3-year 30, I wouldn't balk at. 10 million a year is not terrible. He's still young, very young at 25 years old. He'll be 28, I'm sorry, 26. Let's see, in July. He'll be 26 in July, so he's still really young. Former 3rd-round pick out of Stanford. So obviously we've got some guys in-house like Shaw that know, or Morton, Shaw, that know this guy, right? Paulson Adebo, the connection there. He was at that school when he was there. So makes sense. I do like it. I do like the contract. It's a good opportunity. Interesting, J-Rod. I didn't hear that from Slay. I don't know why he would comment on Samuel like that. It's pretty cool, though, that he did. Super Bowl, Wilson says Avonte Maddox from the Eagles is a free agent. Avonte Maddox from the Eagles. Let's take a look. So Avonte Maddox, selected in the 4th round, has 7 years of experience. Wow, he started young. He'll be 29 years old here in just about 21 days. So he's a little bit older, obviously a vet. I don't have anything on market value right now, but last season he was paid, league minimum. Statistically speaking, he did play in 17 games. He only had 2 starts, about 300 snaps. He didn't register a sack or interception that I can see. None. About 20 tackles on the year. take a look at PFF. Okay, so Maddox in a very loaded corner room last year. That DB room was on fire. Yeah, he didn't have a good year. Coverage grade was below average. Run defense below average. Overall grade below average. I'd have to see more, especially for a starting left corner. I'd have to see more. He's only 5'9". Only 5'9", 184 pounds. So he's another Amik Robertson comp. I'm good on the small guys. So the St. Brown brothers asked him about Asante Samuel. I wonder why that is. Must be to something to that. So, all right, tomorrow, obviously the morning show, 8 a.m. I think we're going to start walking through. I haven't even talked to the guys, but I want to start walking through what's going to happen tomorrow. Obviously, we'll be live. If things are breaking, we'll break it. I might try to put out another article tonight that'll highlight what I'm expecting for Brad to do over the next couple of days, based on some rumors that I've also heard, which I'm not going to discuss right now. We'll see what we come up with. So anyway, I appreciate you guys joining me tonight. This was all supposed to just be about Myles Garrett and Aidan Hutchinson, but you know how that goes. Once the motor mouth gets going, they don't stop. I'll wrap it up with this. I'm a little concerned that these edge rusher dollars are becoming too much to the point that you just can't keep everybody. You can't. At some point it's going to cause issues, right? I mean, us fans first, right? We love to have, some of the players that we've grown to love anyway on the team. But it's a business, and I expect Brad to handle it that way. I hope you would all expect it to be handled that way. Do what's right for the team. There's no one player that is above the team. And when you have that mentality, I think that your team grows. When your team grows, it can be successful. And we've had nothing but success over the last couple of seasons. I'm not a big believer in the window at all. And we've seen teams, there was no window. And they've gone from, worst to first, worst to Super Bowl. We've seen it happen. So I don't really believe in this window thing. I know people have been talking about it. I don't think that there's a window. I think that you have a definitive time because of the roster that you have and the contracts that roster has. But you know what? Every year there's 20, 25, 30% roster attrition every year over year. So it's almost like you're resetting anyway. You keep your core guys, you're resetting anyway. So you never know what you're going to have. You could have the widest window. You could have the greatest team assembled, but maybe the 20 or 30% that you just brought in didn't help you get better. And so you didn't go anywhere. That's why the draft is so important, because you have to bring in high quality guys. All right. Sorry to see Zadarius Smith go. We'll talk more about it tomorrow morning on the Rise of Grind Morning Show. You guys have a great night. Go Detroit Lions. We'll catch you later.